Hi, this is Fran Mayer for the Napa Institute, and welcome to another podcast. Today we're going to be interviewing Chris Stefanick, who is the founder and president of Real Life Catholic, which is really one of the most impressive and effective lay ministries in the United States. What most people don't know is that Chris and I actually go back till the point where I think dinosaurs were walking the Archdiocese of Denver. You know, that's a long time ago, Chris. Right?
Yeah, when I'm called the young evangelist now, it's like, not so much anymore.
Not so young evangelist, right?
Yeah.
Chris, before we get started, the audience should know that you're going to be a presenter at this year's Napa Institute Summer Conference, which of course is a virtual conference thanks to our brothers in the COVID industry.
Oh, Lord
that'll
have mercy.
That'll be August 14th and 15th. And why don't you give people an idea of what you'll be talking about and why something like the Napa Conference is actually worth attending, even if virtually.
Yeah, I'll be talking about how to create an evangelistic culture in the church, in your own heart, in your relationships, in your home. One that's joyful, one that's fearless, even when the world is going up in flames.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we often take our cues from the world, and that forms our spirit and how we respond to things. But when you read, I've been reading through St. Paul's prison epistles lately, and that's where he writes most of the things he writes about joy, about having the right attitude, frankly, you see that spirit that he described as being more than a conqueror in all his writings from prison. And as he's there in chains, I mean, he's actually writing about how he's converting prison guards. So he's not thinking, dang, I'm right where Rome wants me. He's thinking, these guards are right where I want them. So there's some unconquerable about him. So I'll be talking all about that and really how to do that in practical ways every day. And Napa, I mean, these are the places where synergy happens between leaders. I mean, that's what leads to explosions in ministry. And there's no replacing face-to-face. I mean, it's really tragic not to be able to get together. But this is the next best thing. So just to see what's going on out there and to hear it, that the Lord speaks through those things to all of us and guides our creativities and energies and forges relationships that end up changing the world.
Mm-hmm.
You know, saints don't happen in isolation. Saints happen together.
Right. Yeah. Chris, you and I, when we first knew each other, you were working primarily in youth and young adult ministry, but that's really expanded immensely over the years. Why don't you give people an idea of what you're doing now and what your primary target audience is?
Yeah. So our mission is all about transforming lives in Jesus Christ. So Real Life Catholic's about proclaiming the truth, beauty, and power of the gospel to a world that's forgotten. Most people look at Christianity, most people look at Catholicism and associate it just with a handful of issues, moral teachings that are taken out of the context of the gospel, and they see it as a negative proposition, as dead weight in their lives. So they're not remotely interested. And yet what we have here in Catholicism is literally the best news that mankind has ever received. So it's about reproposing that with fresh joy and in a new compelling way. So it's about doing that. Number two, showing people how to live that in their everyday life. And that's all part of the value proposition, so to speak, of the gospel.
Mm-hmm.
That if this doesn't make my life better, why am I going to give you my time?
Mm-hmm.
You know, so we proclaim that beauty, show people how to live it and how it makes life better. And then three, empower lay Catholics to do what we do, to proclaim the gospel and to live it out and to share that with their friends. The ministry was primarily, until very recently, all about our mega events. I mean, we had a lot of media that we've done, but the main driver of the ministry
Really
is
good
about our
media, by
events.
the way. Your videos are absolutely terrific. The short things
Thank you.
that you have on YouTube, fabulous stuff.
Thank you, brother. Yeah. So the live events were a great delivery system for the whole mission. We worked with parishes for 6 months before I got there and intentionally trained their outreach teams to invite their friends and family back to church. And the messaging is such that it will engage a very engaged Catholic and a pagan simultaneously. So people aren't afraid to invite their disengaged friends to our events, and we show them how. So we go to small town USA and get 1,000 people typically, and and we see conversions all the time. I mean, it's really been mind blowing the amount of lives transformed. COVID has been a real blessing for us in a strange way. I mean, there's always blessings hidden in the crosses, right? I prefer that there be no crosses, but COVID has been a blessing I'd like to be the patron saint of people who sit on a beach and sip a Corona, but that's just not how saints are made.
Yeah, there's a lot of people in line for that.
Yeah, right. So it's been a blessing because it's forcing us to get more intentional about the digital side of our ministry, which really reaches a lot more people. And to take that same thing that we do and scale it up and digitize it, and to provide programming and messaging that has that in our events and that empowers people to invite their friends and family back to God. So we're building a whole new series called the Life You Were Made For series for small group ministry support, to empower lay Catholics. And I know some people hear the word small group ministry and their eyes glaze over. They think of sitting in a folding metal chair and being taught something for an hour and then going home, right? And maybe there's generic
I don't think that's going to happen with
from the
you,
store.
Chris.
No, it's not going to happen.
You kind of embody energy in the way that you deliver things. And we'll come back to that in a minute, because I mean, I think that's one of the things lacking in so many of the religious experiences or religious events people go to. I mean, you have to be convinced that the person who's talking to you actually believes what they're saying, you know, and you certainly have the ability to do that.
And what joy conveys is that what I'm saying has actually made my life better. I mean, you should want what I'm talking about. And I should show you by the way I'm smiling, but you should want what I'm talking about.
Yeah. You know, one of the things that I've noticed over the years is that among all the different focuses that you've had, you put some real effort into forming men. And I want you to talk a little bit about that. Why men? And what are the issues that you see men facing right now in terms of having a strong Christian identity or building one?
Yeah, let me backtrack a little into that last question and bleed it into the men question if I can. The small group ministry focus, empowering Catholics to do that. This is the missing link in church ministry right now. A lot of resources are available to educate us, and that's fantastic, right? But resources that are specifically made to get us together, sharing everyday life together, it's hard to find that stuff in the church. And it's one of the reasons we're failing next to Protestant megachurches. I'm friends with some people who work with Pastor Rick Warren. I got to interview him recently at Saddleback, and I asked what percentage of your people are ministry, and he said 124%. They have more people in their small groups than going to their church. That's the secret sauce. And you know, there's Chinese proverb: the best time to plant a tree is 20 years ago. The next best time is now. Right? that needs to be the secret sauce in the Catholic Church too, and we just have to make it easy for people to do it. Most people don't have the time to learn all the principles of how to do something. You know what? Give me the tool, with no prep required, and I'll form a meaningful experience of Catholicism in my house. That's what a lot of our men's ministry is focused on too, is getting men together around real life sharing. We produced a program called Rise, and it's really about men reclaiming their identity in Jesus Christ. You know, if there's a tragedy, if there's a crisis in masculine culture, it's that men don't know who they are anymore.
That's so ironic, because the church has been led by men from its founding, and yet at the same time, in some senses, it's effeminized, or it's just lost its ability to have a masculine identity.
Yeah, I think there's been more writings in recent decades about the dignity and nature and beauty of woman, almost as an apologetic, as an apology that, well, we ordain men, so we want to raise up women. And it's like, okay, what about the rest of us guys who aren't called the priesthood? What about the dignity and nature and power and authority and beauty of man? This program I created, it's all about your identity and living it out in Christ as a man specifically. And one of my friends who filmed it for us was describing it to a friend of his and said, it's about masculinity. And then he said, but not in a toxic way. And as he shared that, I thought, you know, wow, the postmodern mind inserts the word toxic in front of the word man and masculine.
Crazy. It's absolutely.
It is. And it's all part of the evil one's plan, because when men aren't rising up and doing what they're supposed to do in society and in the world, the vocation crisis is not just a priesthood, it's a manhood. You got to become a man first and answer that call before you can think about becoming a priest or getting married or doing anything. But that crisis underlies so many other crises. I mean, almost every problem in a child's life can be solved by dad being present in that kid's life, by taking him fishing, for crying out loud. I mean, look at how the world's going up in flames right now. people who act out of racism and anger, uh, they don't know who they are inside. They don't feel loved. They probably don't have a good relationship with dad. Then people who respond to that by rioting and burning things down, I guarantee you, most of these people have an absence in their souls. These
Yeah.
people who are out in Antifa, they're angry. Their dad didn't invest in them.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I think it's from Micah that's talking about turning the hearts of fathers to their children, lest I strike the land with doom. I mean, this is what happens when the hearts of fathers don't rise up and live out their vocation. It's doom. It's total destruction. So just by being who we are, we can save the world.
Yeah, Archbishop Chaput, I remember in one of his talks, said that being male is an accident of biology. Being a man is learned and earned. I mean, you have to, and that's pretty much what you've been doing with your outreach to men. Chris, you're at a point in your career where you've built a successful apostolate. People know who you are. You're effective in a lot of different ways. I mean, what were the primary challenges that you faced in getting off the ground, and what were the mistakes that you made along the way, and what did you do about those mistakes?
Yeah, I think one of the biggest challenges I faced in launching my apostolate, there's a Catholic culture that's very high class, kind of white collar, and that's all good. But we have the biggest blue collar religion in history. Mm-hmm. Right? There's a I mean, right? This is the faith of the everyday Joe. This is who we are. And, launching a ministry that's primarily evangelistic and catechetical in nature and very intentionally down to earth. I mean, usually when I'm preaching to a large crowd, I'm wearing a t-shirt. Mm-hmm. That's my professional work uniform. That's not an accident. That's not because I lack professionalism. I'm going for that.
Yeah.
But launching a ministry with that style in the Catholic world, it's taken a long time and to be taken seriously. Mm-hmm. To be honest with you, which is, it's part of the reason we're not as effective as a church. And again, I'm not putting down other ministries that are mainly educational, theological in nature, but a lot of people who examine ministries or in the Catholic will see those types of ministries and think, well, those are for adults, whereas stuff that's about everyday life, and joyful, is for kids. And give me a pat in the head. I love what he does for the kids. I swear, if we converted Joe Olstein to Catholicism, we'd say, hey, there's a great junior high youth group for you. And he'd say, I have an XM station. I'm not sure if you guys noticed that the reach is beyond 12-year-old kids with this kind of approach. Mm-hmm. So but it's also been part of the success. I mean, a lot of our work has gotten so much traction because it's hitting people where they are and feels very down to earth. People see the style, think, I can relate with that. I want that. And another issue, another problem I think anyone's going to face in launching a ministry is donor fatigue. I think that's very real. Mm-hmm. People get tired of being asked. I mean, if someone's listening right now and you have donor fatigue, I'll tell you, man, there's bishops who have bishops fatigue. There's evangelists who on their 500th flight, I'm in the Million Mile Club, get evangelist fatigue. And right now is not a time in the history of the church where we can afford to have engaged Catholics give into their fatigue. We have to do what we do with the strength that God gives us to do it. And if he's calling you to give. If he's calling you to preach, man, let's lean in.
You know what? One of the things that strikes me as you're talking, Chris, is that two of your audiences that could present a problem if they weren't, if a person isn't as effective as you are, for example, in reaching people, bishops, how do you win their confidence? And donors, how do you win their confidence?
Yeah.
Because, bishops are a conservative group and donors have fatigue giving to organizations that may not be effective. They both have good reasons to tell you no. So what do you do about that?
Yeah, you need to be really clear about the impact you want to make. People don't give to organizations or to people. They give to impact. They give because they want to see something happen with their money. Mm-hmm. So you got to articulate clearly what you're going to make happen. And there's something very healthy. You have a nonprofit. It forces you to constantly refine your messaging, which forces you to stay on point. It streamlines your whole life. So it's been a real blessing to me to interact with donors and to refine my own mission and calling, frankly. So you have to be clear about what the value proposition, what you're bringing to the church and to the world, and you have to follow through on what you say you're going to do. We built our ministry with major gifts, and we were going to be self-sustaining with our events, and we did that. We're launching something new that's going to, we could do our event part of our ministry until I'm 90 without any major gifts, which is awesome. It's been self-perpetuating. We're launching something new. We're bringing the same promise to people that what we launch requires gifts up front. It's going to be self-sustaining. But I tell you, if you don't follow through on that promise and you go back and you say, I need more help, but what I asked for help for didn't work, and it takes a lot of mercy. Sometimes there's good reasons for that. We're all pivoting together in a crazy world. But so there's those two things that I think win confidence from donors and from bishops.
What are the key elements of an effective apostolate for you? I mean, if you had to boil it out, okay, these are the things that are kind of universals that you need to bring to the table.
Yeah. An effective apostolate, you can't fake this love with Jesus. You have to be living this out. I mean, years of preaching to live audiences, it's become clearer and clearer to me. It doesn't really matter if I say things just right. But the person that I present out there in front of people makes the impact.
Absolutely.
That's my life was changed as a kid. My parents dragged me to a retreat, and it wasn't even the people on the stage that changed my life. It was the people in the room. Pope Benedict XVI wrote once that the first Christians called themselves the living ones. And I saw, just by looking at the people in that room, that I was dead inside and I wanted what they had. Mm-hmm. So every apostolate, that's the function. We're presenting something to the world that we can't fake. You have to be a living one. You have to be in love. Then you have to have a very clear value proposition. What are you bringing to my life? How are you making my life better? A lot of people perceive Catholicism as an institution that exists for itself. The church comes into my life to take something from me. Mm-hmm. If there's a scandal, they've grown up seeing a church that has responded in a way that was historically self-protective. And we've earned that brand, and we have to now earn a new brand that we exist for you. Mm-hmm. You look at Jesus's words, I came so that you might have life to the full. And again, in John's gospel, I've told you these things so my joy may be in you and your joy may be complete. I'm not telling you these things because it's about me, even though for him, it is about him. But the thing that motivates me to him is, what do I get out of it? Now, when you're a saint and in a unitive state, you don't care about that anymore, right? But we need to come to people with something that's clear, that brings value to their lives. I think of the campaign where Mac won Marketplace over PC. And this is back in the day when Mac was a newer thing. I remember these commercials. There's a PC guy who's standing there looking at his computer. He's looking at all his gear, and he's geeking out on it. And it's a great computer. The Mac guy doesn't even have a computer. He's looking at you, saying, I want to help you express yourself. It's not about me. It's not about my gear. I'm not going to come at people with a bunch of information that they don't see the tie-in to their life and how it makes their life better. Another way to think about it, people want to be the hero in their own story. They're not looking for you to come in and be the hero. I'm gonna geek out on you for a second. They're not looking for you to come in their life as Luke Skywalker. They want to be Luke Skywalker. Yeah. They're looking for you to come in their life as Yoda. Do you coach them? Do you empower them?
Yeah,
that's the brand shift we have to make from Luke to Yoda.
True. Now, in your experience, is there a difference in the skill set that you need as a founder and as a leader? I mean, some people know how to found organizations, but they can't sustain them. And some people don't have the initiative to start something, but they're really, really good at running them. I mean, what's your experience been there?
My gifts are mainly in founding, leading. I'm entrepreneurial vision guy, torch bearer that helps inspire people. But the sustaining part, I've had to wrap my brain around all the details that go into sustaining a ministry, but I have other people to do that. Mm-hmm. I think a key for any successful ministry is knowing what you're gifted at and what you're not gifted at, and not falling into the pride that would say, I have to be gifted at all of it. Mm-hmm. It's humility is a shield that the devil can't get through, man. Yeah. And I think God has built lacks into me, things that I'm lacking, because he wants me to do what he did for me. He could have preached the gospel to the whole world himself, but he chose to set things up so that he'd need us because he wanted to expand our joy, not just to have the joy of salvation, but the joy of bringing salvation to others. And then within us, he builds lack, things that we need others to complete, so we can share the joy of our mission. So these weaknesses are only problems if you're proud. These weaknesses are strengths if you realize what you're lacking. And any good business leader knows this. If you recognize what you lack and just hire the right people to do it with you, I mean, you got to have your brain wrapped around each phase of founding and leading and sustaining. But if you bring the right people in, then you're good.
How do you
stay in your sweet spot?
Chris, how do you recruit and form the people that provide your support group? Or maybe the question really is, how do you replicate yourself? Because sooner or later, Chris, you're going to be the old Catholic evangelist.
I'm hoping that, like Billy Graham and John Paul II, I'm still doing what I'm doing from my chair, right? But no, you really, our whole ministry is about conveying that you can do what I do. I want people to. I film a lot of my videos with a baseball cap on, a T-shirt, because I want people to see me and think he's not that special. I can do what he does. To what I'd say, yes, you can. You're supposed to do that in your everyday life, not necessarily in a professional ministry capacity, but this is about starting a grassroots movement of people who latch onto this and share it with the world. I also think, for the resources we're going to be producing for small group ministries, most Catholics and most parishes, they're not entrepreneurs, they're franchises. They don't want you to tell them all the principles of what makes you successful at what you do. They want you to give them the burger patty and tell them how hot to make the oven, because they have good intentions, but they're busy. So I think it's really key to have plug and play, easy systems to empower people to do what we're doing, which is to share the gospel with joy. So that's what I'm hoping they're making thousands of me, honestly.
Yeah, Chris, the thing though that I keep thinking of as I'm watching you, for example, is a point that you made very early in the interview, which is you can't fake your love for Jesus Christ. I mean, you really have to have it, which means, I think, and I'd like your opinion about this. I mean, it isn't limited to a particular temperament or personality. I mean, different people bring different gifts, but the key thing seems to me to be, does he really mean what he's saying, or is he really living what he's saying? I've used this in one or two other Napa interviews, but like during this whole COVID thing, when other parishes were going down the chute financially, our contributions went up, and they went up for one reason: the pastor. The pastor's a guy who knows how to lead, who's present to his people, who is a likable fellow. He's clearly the one in charge, but he listens well. And he's clearly committed to beautifying and building up the parish. People respond to that, He's got a very different personality from you, but he's a guy that I look at every week and say, yeah, we'll support that.
Beautiful. One of the biggest mistakes I made in ministry was trying to be people that I'm not. You see different people who are successful in ministry. I remember growing up, going to college and starting in ministry as a younger guy and thinking, I want to be Scott Hahn. I want to be Jeff Cavins. I want to be Jason Everett. I want to be, whoever it is. And the vocation in the church is really about being yourself in Jesus Christ, being fully alive and doing what you're supposed to do. Not everybody's going to have the same approach I have. I sure would like to see more joy in the church. He's risen, tell your face. I think we need to put that smile on a little more. But there's some people whose primary charism would be more joy, whose temperament is more on the sanguine side. That's a blessing that I'm called to be, but not somebody else. And if someone is more cerebral or theological in nature, just go there. I mean, right, like, and what your pastor's doing. It's about being real.
You've also just told me why Sue Ann calls me Eeyore sometimes.
That's right. We need Eeyore in ministry too.
Yeah, but I think the last question that I've got, this may lead to others, but I mean, the last question I've got, Chris, is you're in the field, you see where the church is going in a lot of ways, and you're also experiencing her anxieties and frustrations in that. I mean, how do you see the church fitting into the emerging environment in the United States over the next 20 years, and what kind of skills are people going to have?
Yeah, this is make it or break it time. We have to actually start doing what Vatican II was calling for with lay engagement now. 20 years ago, actually, like that tree.
Yeah.
But the next best time is now. So we have to be seriously engaged as laymen. And I think we're still very clericalist. Not our priests, not our bishops. They're people. Are clericalists.
People, yeah. The lay people.
Yeah. We want Father to do everything. Everything has that hierarchical nature, which is great for a lot of the aspects of the church. But the life of the church, we tend to leave it all with the pastor. We leave it all with the sacraments. That's just a part of what it means to live the Catholic life. That's not the whole show. And it was never intended to be. I mean, in the early church, you wouldn't even go to the entirety of Mass before you got your sacraments, before the Easter Vigil. You were dismissed after the readings of homily. You didn't even know what the Eucharist was until the night you received it, right? This is not, we treat the liturgy and the things that the priests bring to us as the everything in ministry. It was never meant. So I think laymen need to start being the church that they want to see happen in the world. You know, if you think the church isn't welcoming enough, isn't friendly enough, it doesn't reach out to people enough, I'd say you're the church, man. What are you doing about it? What are we all doing about it? If you think the church isn't vocal or courageous or leading enough, well, as a Catholic, you speak out. And yeah, there's ways that I'd like bishops and priests to change, and there's ways they'd like me to change, right? And I I can't spend the rest of my life complaining about things, though. It just wastes my time and drains my spirit. You know, I have to just lead in the capacity God has given me. So if people stop underestimating their importance, somebody might be listening and thinking, well, I don't have a platform, or I don't have this or that. Yes, you do. You have the platform God's given you in your life. And if every one of the billion Catholics on earth, and there's a billion of us, stop saying, oh, what can I do? And start saying, what can I do? Right? The world would change. It's a lot of people to change the world.
Yeah. You know, I'm really looking forward to your Napa presentation. And I hope this interview leads people to watch it, because you really do have the kind of presence and energy that people just desperately need right now. So Chris, I'm really grateful for the time. It's a great interview, and I wish you the best. And I'm going to be watching. So do well, okay?
Oh, you got it. You got it.
Right. I'll talk to you soon. Thanks a lot.
Thanks for interviewing me.
God bless.
Bye.